Hey everybody, we're back. You asked to see some more explanations of how things work, and today we're going to do that. I thought I'd put on my glasses because somebody said they make me look smarter. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't feel smarter, but at least I can see. That's one of the nuances of getting old. You know, it just happens to all of us, I suppose. But here I am. I'm actually sitting down because this video is going to be a little longer, so I thought I'd get comfortable, and the shop environment is more organic. I got my welder guy working in the background making a cool race car for somebody. And you know what? It's a sunny day. It's a beautiful day. And we're going to get into this on the Rev-6. So a lot of guys asked, hey, and they keep asking about pull down, pull down, pull down. What is pull down? And then they take a shim out, or they add a shim, or they take a bunch of shims out, or add a bunch of shims without ever knowing what pull down is. And I've done a video on this before, but I'm hoping that I can kind of explain it a little more organically today and take some time so that you'll understand what pull down really means, because the concept is actually backwards to thinking. So as we get into this, I'm going to go as slow as I can to show you some of these things, and I'm just going to assemble, and I'll be talking a little bit as I'm assembling so you guys can kind of get the feel of what's happening. So you either want to or you have purchased a Rev-6 or a Street 6 clutch. The concept is the same. Basically, the clutch works very much unlike a regular standard style Volkswagen clutch, where the pressure plate and the spring are attached to each other. So this is what we call the pressure plate. You might call the pressure plate like a Kennedy style deal or on top, but in a floater clutch, this is the top friction surface that rides against the top clutch disc. So, and this goes into the assembly. The diaphragm, and I'll show you these later, this diaphragm just basically rides on top of this. And as you press the clutch in and out, it articulates the diaphragm and pushes pressure against the clutch. So that's just a basic concept. I mean, we'll go into a little more of that later. So let me show you as I assemble this deal. So I'm going to grab a clutch disc and I'll put it on the bottom. That's the bottom clutch disc. We'll shoot cutaways later so you can kind of see. This is the floater plate. It's flat on both sides, but it's really thick for heavy duty sake. This goes on top of this first disc. You put that in there, and then you grab your next disc, whichever one I give you, and I'll explain that later. There's different compound discs. And then you put the top disc, so you have for the dual disc guys anyways, you have a bottom disc, you have a floater in between the discs, and you have a top disc. Then you have the top friction surface, what we call the pressure plate, because this is the plate the pressure rides on. Then that goes on there. Then you have your cover. This is the Rev-6 cover. Has the diaphragm in it, has the power rockers in there. This one happens to have 4 rockers on it. You can have 3, 4, or all 6 rockers. See what I did with my hands there? 3, 4, or 6. This is actually not a finger, it's a thumb. But what that does is it keeps it in balance. So if you can see the cover, if you have 3, that makes a good balance, like, you know, 3 positions. If you have 4, that makes a good position. You can't have 5 because it would throw it out of balance. And then you can have 6. And I'll cover that in a minute. So we'll see what's going on. So then as you get this basically assembled, I'm not going to use my input shaft tool because it's not important right now. We're not trying to install this deal. But basically you have assembled the clutch. Bottom disc, floater, pressure plate, cover. Now, if you're looking at the clutch, you'll see that there's a gap now in between the cover, and I'll show that cutaway. There's a gap in between there where you don't have any shims in there right now. So I'm going to take a measurement of the shim distance right there underneath the cover. And on this given clutch, I'm coming up with right around 200 thousandths. Again, we'll do a shot on that. So what you want to do is you want to come to the pull down number that I'm telling you is the proper number. So the pull down numbers are from 80 thousandths to 110 thousandths. And you use these little shims that I give you to basically do that deal. So each one of these shims is 10 thousandths. And if I wanted 80 and I've got 200, then you take and you add 120 thousandths worth of shim. And the way I like to typically do it is I'll basically take and add that amount of shims, and then I'll check it with my caliper. And if I've got the 120 in shims, then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these shims underneath the stand. So you're going to take your shims, your 10,000 shims, and you're going to sit them underneath the stand. Then when you put the stand back on, now the gap has changed. So now you can remeasure the gap and come up with your 80 thousandths on your digital calipers. I like to use the digital ones because it makes it easy. You can use analog or you can use whatever you want to use. Pull down in a nutshell is how flat you make the diaphragm. You can see the diaphragm when it's in its natural position. It's, you know, it's like a cone. So as you begin to tighten it down, this flattens out. Now I'm going to show you on my little drill press deal what it looks like with an actual pressure gauge to show you what happens to the diaphragm when it's compressed. And as you compress that diaphragm down, the diaphragm goes flat. And the flatter you get it, the less the diaphragm spring has in pressure. So we'll do that here in just a second. Hey guys, we're back here with a little gauge setup that I made years ago in 2010 when I came up with the idea for this deal. And I really needed to know how much pressure it took to move the diaphragm. So I came up with this little hub off of a pulley and this little hydraulic valve spring checker. And we're on my drill press now, and I'm going to show you how the number snaps. And pay attention to, as the thing travels through, you see the number come up and then fall. And that's the snap of the diaphragm. That's what you feel on your foot when you push the clutch down, and it feels harder and then it goes easy. It's like what we call the pop or the spring, or some people called it a tin can effect, or whatever you want to call it. But it's really important to how the clutch works. And when you do the pull down, you're changing this relation. So I'm going to just show you simply how we kind of came to understand and measure this deal. So if you want to kind of close in on this now, we'll show you. So the diaphragm, this is where your throwout bearing is going to push against the clutch. Also too, I wanted to show you, just hang tight. In the other part of the video, we showed you why cutting 200 thousandths off of this collar where the throwout bearing rides on the transmission is so important, because when you put this all together, this is going to want to bump into that top disc. You don't want that to happen. That's called a bad day. When you cut and trim the 200 thousandths off here, it makes it so that all this stuff will not bump and interfere. So I needed to show that now so you understood the relationship between the throwout bearing riding on here and how much room. And so when I say cut 200 off, you can see the little folded end. You're going to cut the last little 200 thousandths off this piece here. And we've showed you a little clip of that video and how much. So this simulates the throwout bearing face. This is our pressure gauge that's going to show as we articulate. And it's just easy to do it. I could do it on an arbor press, but this is the easy way to do it. So if you want to come up here and look at this gauge here, as I move the clutch down, you can see the pressure going up. So like you're pushing on the clutch, and then all of a sudden, wham, it goes over center. That's like at 300 pounds, but it took nearly 400, right at 400 to push it in, and then snap. There it goes. That's when you're articulating the clutch through its range and you're pushing the clutch pedal down, snap. And so when you do pull down, like I'd said, the more flat you get the diaphragm, then all of a sudden the diaphragm spring pressure starts going away as you get the diaphragm more flat. That zone or that range is from 80 to 110 thousandths. But if you look down here, you can see, if you look at the floater pieces, as I articulate the clutch, see how that frees it up in the stands? Like the clutch is not pushed, I push the clutch down, and then that's how much it frees up. So the discs are free to move. The floaters are free to move. That's when you articulate the clutch all the way through. It's actually kind of cool. When you move it around, you can see that's how it works. That's the free play you have when the clutch is depressed. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, we've showed you pull down and how you adjust the clutch once it's all together. But let me talk just for a second about the difference in the diaphragm thicknesses. We already showed you the cutaway photos of the thickness of the light diaphragm, the medium diaphragm, and the heavy diaphragm. Basically, if you were to use what you might know as stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, I don't really do that. It's just light and medium and heavy. The light diaphragm would be for lower horsepower, you know, lower torque, lower horsepower, maybe a small turbo motor or something like that. Most of the clutches we send out have a medium diaphragm in them, and that covers the middle zone of where most everybody is. And then the heavy, I've only had really a handful of guys even need the heavy, guys that run all the way down to the high 7-second zone, maybe low 8 zone with a heavy diaphragm. It adds a considerable amount of clamp load to the clutch. I've already explained how the rockers add 10% for each rocker that you have. 3 is 30, 4 is 40, and 6 is 60 more clamp load. So you understand now that you can use a light, a medium, or a heavy cone to get your base pressure, and then the rocker arms, you can add those to get the amount of overdrive, if you will, or centrifugal clamp load to the clutch. I also showed you a cutaway of the discs. we have an aggressive disc, and we have a 50-50 disc, and we have a slippery disc. We have 3 different compound discs. You can put those together in any order that you want to come up with the amount of torque load that you want to cover your application. So it would be much different for like my organic disc, which is the Street 6. If you run those, there's one compound for that. They're organic, but they are metal woven, so they're pretty stout discs. And on a given Street 6 with a medium diaphragm, you can run up to 500 horsepower on the street. I put it in quotes and air brackets because my idea of a street car is a race car with license plates. However, if you have a high power car that you want to drive to Cars and Coffee, then you can use my Street 6. If you have a drag only car, then I have you fill out a survey, and then I decide how much power, how much the car weighs, what the gear ratio is, and then we put the different discs in there with the different diaphragm and the different rockers, and then the pull down is the final thing that we use to adjust or fine tune the clutch to have more or less clamp load. It's pretty adjustable, so you can see we can cover a wide range of applications to make your car more fun to drive. It's the first time I've said that in this video, but it still rings true. Fun to drive, that's our goal. So thank you, and I'll show you that cutaway now. Okay, so on this cover, we have it flipped upside down on this display flywheel. This is just a simple display so we can see things more clearly. You can see we already have 4 rockers in here, and see how they move freely. But if you can imagine this spinning around really fast, these rocker arms want to fling out. When they fling out, this little rocker tip here pushes down, if you will, this way on the pressure plate, which is inside. So this pin, this little drive pin in here, it's captured in the flywheel. So basically, that goes in there, it snaps in pretty tight. And these little drive bolts, little screws, 1032s, whatever you want to call them, Allen bolts, these, if I can make my fingers work correctly, either way, you get the idea. Oops. Basically, these little suckers go down in there and they torque that down so it's a captured audience, can't go anywhere. But you can see that as the RPM rises, and these get flung out with centrifugal force, as the RPM goes up, this little pin here will actually push down on the underside of this, which again pushes on the diaphragm, and it pushes on the pressure plate. So again, you can have 1, 2, 3, and it keeps proper balance, or you can have 4 to go back over and it keeps proper balance, or you can have all 6. If you've got a big turbo motor and you want to have more clamp load, you can have all 6 on there. So it actually works really well. So again, you can see the surface right here where the diaphragm, and again, this works really cool because I have everything apart. You can see the diaphragm right there. And when this is all assembled, that's riding basically right there. You can see maybe a better deal. So as the RPM goes out, it pushes down on there, which pushes down on the whole assembly. So you can see if you have all 6 on there, that's quite a bit. That's 60% more clamp load than you can get with a regular diaphragm. So pretty cool. Pretty awesome stuff. All right, guys, I think we covered a lot of ground today on clutches, at least my clutch and the way that it works, why you would need a light, a medium, or a heavy diaphragm cone, or why you would need a light, a medium, or a heavy disc, like 50-50, slippery, aggressive. All those things are covered when we send you a survey to fill out, and then through experience, we've closed in on nearly 600 units. So we have a lot of data on a lot of the cars with the weight, the power, the tires, what you want to do with it. I think the last question on the survey is, what are your expectations? So you kind of need to know that this is not a regular ordinary clutch. It comes with the flywheel, and you can see we had this mocked up for you to be able to understand so you could see inside. These are our normal flywheels that we use for flange. We have 8 bolt flange, we have 6 bolt flange, and then we have the VW 8 dowels that bolt directly on. And one last thing, some people have talked to me about, why is the flywheel so heavy? We tried the light flywheel thing, we tried aluminum flywheels. On a 4-cylinder motor, there's too much downtime in between the 4 strokes on the motor. And if you have a lightened unit, all that the car wants to do is bog. Every time we added weight to the assembly, the car got faster incrementally. The nuance of the lightened flywheel on a Camaro or a Mustang or a Mopar with 8 cylinders firing on the crank, it just it doesn't apply to these little cars with these little 4 cylinders, because with 720 degrees of rotation, it's 4 strokes. So you'll have a lot of dead time in between 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, and in between 1 and 4, there's nothing happening on the crankshaft. So in a nutshell, we made them heavy so that the flywheel torque, the inertia, would take over when you drop the hammer so that it wouldn't bog the car down. So anyways, some people are going to disagree and fight with me on this. That's okay. That's just, you know, that's the way that it goes. But we found that this works really, really well. And there's a ton of people that have had a great amount of success with these clutches. Again, I didn't cover everything that we could have covered, but I'm sure there's going to be more questions, but hopefully I've answered those in this video today. So thank you very much. And these are all typically in stock most of the time. Sometimes my vendors are a little low. It's a sign of the times. I know you all know what I'm talking about. But for the most part, we try to keep all the stuff in stock. So if you want to talk clutch, or if you have any more questions, you can just send us a message. You can hit us up on social media. You can even call. I try to keep the calls to a minimum because I'm one guy with two hands and I got to get all this done. So anyways, I'm having fun and I want you to have fun to drive. Peace.